Well, hello, Ozzy.
Hello, Mike.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Ozzy, for those that haven't come across you, tell our listeners why we're talking today.
Well, my name is Ozzy Osbrink. I'm the Vice President of Business Development and a contracts consultant for a niche national pharmacy consulting company called Specialty RX Consulting Group, or we just call ourselves SRG for short. We're talking because many independent pharmacies are hurting. One area, Mike, that doesn't get the attention it deserves is the process a pharmacy should take to reduce their cost of goods as low as possible.
You're no stranger to this because you were a quarter century as a sales, can I call it a sales rep for a wholesaler?
Yeah, over 24 years. I started off at Bergen, Brunswick, started off in the warehouse in customer service. And then I got into sales in the late 90s, health systems, and then from health systems to specialty, retail, and so forth. So yeah, I've been doing it for 24 years, business development primarily.
When you say customer service, I take it that's on the phone, but from my memory of Bergen reps coming in, that was a lot of customer service. So you're talking that you were on the phone in the warehouse versus visiting pharmacies and so on?
Oh, I was a customer service manager, actually. I managed the customer service department at the beginning. We would get calls. Every now and then we would get somebody that was really irate. They hate the world. They would call us and very angry, cursing and swearing. And they loved getting me on there because I had a way of calming them down.
When you say they, you mean your team would want to get you on there, or would the customer say, let me talk to Ozzy?
Well, sometimes they would ask, let me talk to Ozzy, and then sometimes they would transfer the call to me because I had a way of calming customers down when they were angry.
How many operators or call receivers did you have at any one time during the day?
1, 2, I'm counting in my head, Mike. It wasn't a very large warehouse at the time. I would say about 6 at the most, 6 customer service reps.
Did they ever come and cry to you?
You mean the customer service reps, Mike?
Yeah, the customer service reps.
No, I don't think so. Sometimes they would cry, but not to me.
But they would cry occasionally from a customer chewing them out?
Yeah. And I understand both sides. I really do. I can understand why a customer would be so frustrated, and then why a customer service rep would get frustrated with the customer. So
I had one of my technicians cry last year because we get a lot of calls, and a lot of times they want to talk to me. They either know me or they want to talk to me because they want the highest level. And I stopped that a long time ago. I'm like, you didn't get to call up Apple and talk to Steve Jobs, or call, the U.S. government and talk to the president, or you know what I mean? Or you don't get to talk to the head of the police or something. And so Every company has to decide how far they want calls to go. Now, maybe if I took all the calls, I could be known as the pharmacy where, he always took all the problem stuff. But it's like, I don't want to go there. So I just say to my technicians, I'll walk it through. If people are pissed enough, you can hear them just through the just through the ear set,
Yeah.
So you can have both conversations, and I'll write them little notes, but I like to have them feel good about that. And no one has to come to me. So you had 6 of them.
Yeah, there were 6. And I didn't start off as a supervisor. And in fact, that was a very short period during that life at Bergen, Brunswick. They recognized a certain quality in me. And so then they moved me into sales. And I loved sales. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely loved sales. But what I really loved more about sales was the consulting aspect of sales. I loved helping people and finding solutions. And so what I do now is just way more my flavor. I like it more.
I was talking to a rep a few shows ago, and I always remember my reps as not really being salespeople. They would come in and, I mean, years ago, they'd come in with their 3-ring binder and they'd have to sell you the latest suntan lotion deal and stuff like that. But then later, either we weren't buying enough or they got, sick of it or something. But later they would just kind of come in and like, how's it going and things like that. But when you were doing that for Amerisource, would you call yourself hard sales, soft sales? Did you do any cold sales? That was a different job than business development, right? Those were all new clients?
I went from sales or being a sales rep, and your viewers can't see my hands, but they're quotes.
The bunny ears quotes.
So
yeah.
I went from a sales rep to business development, which means I was only trying to find new business for the company. I was very successful at that. I was one of the best.
You got all kinds of awards.
Yeah, absolutely. I was very good at bringing on new business. And then once we captured the new business at the time, I don't think it's that way anymore at AmerisourceBergen, but at the time we would just get the new business and then we would move it to the sales reps.
What year was that, Ozzy?
It was the zeros.
God, that would sound like a tough job to me because you loved it.
Oh, I loved it.
It would seem tough to me because, I mean, you might have had some new stores, but am I right that almost everybody that you approached already had somebody else?
Well, most of them did, yeah. Most of them were working with one of our competitors.
So how does that work? What was your game plan?
I had to understand, what are they looking for? What are their needs? What are their challenges? What are they challenged with their current wholesaler? Every wholesaler has places where they can improve. Certain areas where, okay, they're not so good in this area, but they're great in this area. So you just have to find the weak points.
So Ozzy, it would seem to me that the average pharmacist doesn't want to see you though. I mean, wasn't it hard for you to come in and say, hey, I'm Ozzy with this different wholesaler and you're already doing this and you're busy and I want to, meet you and talk to you. I mean, were they open to that or was that a pain in the ass?
Well, sometimes we would just respond to a request for proposal, an RFP.
Oh, they would actually come to you sort of for that.
Right. So in that situation, their ears are wide open. I mean, they're already wanting to talk to you. Every pharmacy was different. Some pharmacies, they want to hear your ideas. They want to talk about everything. And then there's the other pharmacies that... get out of my face. Just give me your numbers. Let me see your cost of goods. But I tell you, it's not that simple. It's not as simple as here's our cost of goods. No, there's just so much more at play.
I had this sales rep. He was about 25 or something. And I give the guy credit because he came in the store and he was like, hey, I'm just in the neighborhood. I'm new here. He was selling some point of sale thing or something like that. And then he came in like 2 times just saying he was just trying to get to know us stuff. And I'm like, I felt like saying, either try to sell me something or get the hell out of here. I'm not taking applications for new friends. I mean, just tell me what you want.
Mike, you don't want a new friend?
So Ozzy, after 24 years, how long ago did 24 years stop?
It was late 2018, so 2019, basically.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
What happens then 2 years ago where you say, I've been doing this 24 years and now I'm not going to be doing it anymore?
Mike, it's a love story. Are you ready for a love story?
Oh, let me get I wish I had one of those buttons where I could bring in some Beatles music or something.
Yeah, it's a love story. I fell in love with independent pharmacy. And I became friends with independent pharmacy owners over the years. And their enthusiasm for unique approaches to patient care and growing their business captivated me. And their passion became my passion. And I followed that passion by switching sides. I wanted to work for independents versus distribution. I enjoy helping independents. And as you already mentioned, Mike, I worked for a quarter of a century in the drug wholesale industry. I was very good at what I did. I was the highest producer at my former company. Actually, right before I left, I was one of the highest producers. I wasn't going down. I was going up.
You're like the Seinfeld of moving companies, and I'm like the Larry King of saying, well, Ozzy, were your ratings going down or what?
I remember that interview. Yeah, that was so awkward. And I do listen to your show, by the way, Mike.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I do. I appreciate your show.
Here's the problem, Ozzy. Some people say that, but then about 90% of them, if I let them keep talking, they say, yeah, when I can't sleep, I just turn it on and I'm usually out in about 6 or 7 minutes.
No, I'll give you an example. Like Shanika Baker, when she was on the show, she was very passionate about helping the geriatric population improve their health through nutrition. And I'm actually into nutrition personally, so I understand that passion. And then Chris Kozelino.
Yeah, building up LinkedIn and things like that.
Right, yeah. And his passion in helping companies to establish their online presence is really cool. Passion is everything. It drives you. Instead of feeling unfulfilled at the end of the work week, if your work is born from passion, of something that you really love to do, then at the end of the work week, you feel satisfied. You want to do it all over again the next week.
It's how I feel about eating.
There you go. every minute of yeah.
Yeah, if your passion guides you, boy, you're a lucky person.
Yeah, and Mike, I love finding errors in wholesale offers. It's like a strategy game for me, like chess playing. And I also love negotiating too, which is part of my job now. And bottom line, I love saving pharmacies money, as much money as possible. So, look, I recognize there was a big hole in the pharmacy owner's understanding of how wholesalers price out drugs. No one was helping pharmacy owners. No one was helping them fill in this hole of understanding.
You leave the wholesaler. You have a passion for helping people. You get in with SRG. SRG then is helping a pharmacist pick the best primary wholesaler. Would that be a simple way to put things?
We help find the floor. That's what we do. We include all the wholesalers, all the buying groups. We try to find the bottom, cost of goods bottom for that independent pharmacy. However we can get there, that's what we do.
What does the floor mean? The lowest price across the board?
The lowest cost of goods possible. Total. Yeah.
All in.
Yeah, all in. What's how can we get this independent pharmacy to spend as little as possible on their inventory? I mean, that's what we're talking about. Let me give you this analogy first to describe what it's like using SRG versus doing it on your own. An independent pharmacy owner, they normally do all this stuff themselves, right? What SRG does. This is a good analogy. If you had millions of dollars at stake and you needed to bring in a lawyer, then you would bring in a lawyer. If it can cost you millions of dollars for whatever reason, right? A person can technically and legally represent themselves, okay? But it will end up costing them more money, more time, more energy, more stress to do it yourself versus just hiring a professional lawyer. So it's a similar comparison to hiring an SRG consultant, but far less expensive. Okay, we have reduced the costs of goods for our clients by millions of dollars. And when I say millions of dollars, I'm talking about a single client. I'm not talking about all together, all my clients. I'm talking about one single client, one store. I've been able to save them millions of dollars. Now, if you're a pharmacy with multiple locations or a large single location, the results are different depending on your pharmacy, depending on the deal that you have currently. It's going to vary. I have no way of knowing. It takes many months to figure out where the bottom is. It's a lot of work, a lot of dedicated time, and it's stressful. It's stressful negotiating and juggling multiple wholesalers and buying groups. And we take all that work off their shoulders.
I imagine that pharmacists sometimes don't want to admit they need you because they're either proud or they're so afraid of that dam breaking of admitting that they have no clue really what their prices are because there's so many damn smoke and mirrors in the industry.
Mike, yep. It's shocking to me that we don't get more calls. Now, I know we're a startup. We're a niche company, and no one does what we do. I mean, honestly.
No one really does that.
No. Nobody does what we do at SRG. Nowhere. So, and it's not that we have some sort of unfair monopoly. It's just, for whatever reason, a lot of pharmacies, they just don't know about us yet, which is one of the reasons why I'm glad you invited me to this show, because independent pharmacies need to know that we exist. Basically, Mike, when we work for an independent pharmacy, we're an extension of that pharmacy. We're kind of like an employee. We don't work for anyone else. We don't have any conflicting interests at all anywhere else. And a buying group can't say that. Wholesalers can't say that. Nobody can say that except for an independent contracts consultant like what you'd find at SRG.
For all I know, everybody you talk to comes on board. All right, but let's just assume that maybe everybody doesn't come on board. What do you think their hangups might be that are not true?
Let's say a pharmacy owner sees me online somewhere, or they watch one of my videos, or they listen to this podcast and they decide, no, I'll just do it myself. I think the reason is they don't have enough information to make the right decision. Because as we go into this podcast, you're going to see, or hopefully if they listen through if they listen entirely to the whole podcast.
Ozzy, just say it. If they don't fall asleep, come on, I can take it.
No, but I'm slowly trying to churn out information. And I think the more I share, the more likely I'll have a lot of phone calls from independents throughout the United States. Look, time is a valuable commodity, Mike. Pharmacy operators are so busy. The co-founder of StatumRx, Craig Douglas, he mentioned in his interview, see, I'm proving to you right now, I listen to your show.
You have. And that wasn't even in the first 7 minutes.
He mentioned in his interview how his entire family worked really hard all the time.
Wait, that was the first 7 minutes.
Well, maybe.
No, it was.
To keep their pharmacy running.
Yeah, right.
And I know, Mike, you know firsthand how much work's involved with a family-owned pharmacy. One of the biggest challenges that exists with independent pharmacies is try to do everything yourself and run a business and not become overextended. That's what I remember from the show. And at SRG, we want to help independents to improve their cost of goods while taking the legwork off their shoulders to get there. So one less thing for them to worry about, so they can put their energy into improving patient care, chasing opportunities to improve revenue enhancement. Time is money, and it's super precious in the independent space. It's a stress to negotiate terms and cost of goods with multiple companies, and that's what you got to do. You can't just negotiate with one or two wholesalers or one buying group or two buying. You want to extend that out as far as possible. Who has time for that in the pharmacy?
Even if they had the time, a ton of time, and a ton of people to do it, they might not know even what to look for, right?
Right. Yeah, I worked for 24 years on the other side. For someone to even think for a second that I don't know what I'm talking about, it would be funny. But I know how it works on the wholesale side.
And you know probably what's hard for the average person to see.
And I know red flags, Mike. I know all of them. I see red flags really fast.
You also have information, not stock information, but you know what people are not truly seeing, right? Is that a fair way to put it?
Exactly. Our comparisons are ultra thorough. And I know that I didn't make that word up. I'm sure that word's been used before, but ultra thorough. So we break down every cost of goods application for every drug our client purchases. It includes how rebates are applied, annual checks they may receive from their buying group if they're in a buying group. If we don't have the exact dollar figure for an upcoming annual check, Based on previous years and future growth models, we will include estimates to get as close as possible to the actual payout, and we'll include that in the comparison. We flag and include every class or category in our comparisons. Net build categories, generic program categories, over-the-counter, HBC medical supplies, non-standard terms to traditional cost of goods applications, to specialty tiers, to operationally difficult to manage categories, to biosimilar, to GPO. You get it. Each category has a different cost of goods application from the wholesaler. If a wholesaler tells you that they can improve your cost of goods by 100 basis points, 200 basis points, 300 basis points, what I want independent pharmacies to understand is this simple truth. That doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. Until you can get an apples to apples, every line item comparison done and rule out all the errors, it doesn't mean anything. We catch so many errors, Mike, in comparisons. I have never received an accurate cost of goods breakdown from any wholesaler buying group ever. Not once. And usually takes around 8, 9, 10 iterations of data that we're receiving from the wholesalers before we can feel pretty good about the data that we can use it for the comparison. Let me give you an example of an error that we'll find.
Are you being kind, calling these errors?
I'm not necessarily saying that it's the fault of the wholesaler or the buying group. Okay, when I say errors, I'm not necessarily saying it's their fault. So let me explain.
I'd be okay if maybe there's an error. What I was wondering, though, if they're calling them errors, but they're actually sneakies.
Well, I'm not going to...
You're not going to comment right now.
I'm not going to comment on that.
Okay, I got you. I understand.
We'll leave it to the imagination of your audience.
We'll call it errors right now. Gotcha.
Okay, so an error that I often find, we'll call it error, is large WAC changes that distort the accuracy of the offers, that really make the comparisons mute. When I say mute, invalid, stupid, they don't mean anything. So, and this isn't intentional on the part of the wholesaler or the buying group. It's not. It's not their fault. The problem stems from the fact that the wholesalers update their WAC prices to reflect manufacturer price changes at different times, sometimes more than a month apart. So now I won't go into all the reasons why the wholesalers don't change the WAC at the same exact time, because it's not relevant, Mike. But the reality is they don't. Okay, so what can happen? Take as an example a drug where the manufacturer price increased by 300% overnight. Okay, that's not uncommon. This can be caused for various reasons, raw material shortages, blah, 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 blah. But the problem is, in general, cost of goods discounts are applied on top of the WAC. If one wholesaler in their comparative analysis is applying their cost of goods discount on this drug based on last month's WAC, and another wholesaler buying group's applying to the new WAC for this drug, you see the problem? This is a big issue. In one comparison we were working on last year, if we didn't correct the WAC for this one item, it would have made over $100,000 error in the comparison. That was one item.
One item. And when they give you this column, they're not going to tell you if it's the old or new or whatever.
Most of that's missing anyway if you don't hire SRG. Most of that's not even touched on. There's nobody out there fixing these problems in comparisons, not the wholesalers, not the buying groups. To keep every wholesaler and buying group on the same page, to be a true apples to apples comparison, no one's doing that.
That sucks.
I mean, we are, by the way. We are.
No, I know you are, but that sucks because you can even ask them to their face. Well, okay, now this is off of WAC, right? And WAC is standard, and then yep. But it's like, oh, well, it's standard, but it changes. And did we update it this morning yet when we gave you this report, or not till this afternoon? And that makes $100,000 difference.
I tell you, and that's where experience comes from on the drug wholesale side. I was good at what I did. I'm analytical by nature. So it takes a special set of skills to do what I do. Not everybody from the wholesale industry could be an SRG consultant. You have to have a certain personality. You got to have grit, hustle, passion, perseverance. You have to understand exactly how things work. And you know, when you understand everything, when you look at numbers, I don't know how to describe this because I can't really describe this, but when I look at numbers, when I receive data from the wholesalers and buying groups, I can see red flags like that. I say, oh, boom, bam, boom, boom. And I can filter that stuff. And anybody with my set of skills could do something similar. And I'm not saying that, I'm unique in that way, because there are people out there.
You're in a position where you can help.
Yeah, because look, I'm not running a pharmacy. I'm in my home office with a foot warmer, and I'm in front of my laptop, and this is all I care about is your pharmacy for months.
Yeah, that instinct is similar to you're at the pharmacy and somebody walks in and they hand you a prescription and they're talking 20% more than the average customer does, and you know that they're abusing the medicine. It's just an instinct, and you can do that with these red flags. It's just like bam, bam, bam.
Yeah, Mike. And it's something that you can't really describe if someone isn't experienced in that part of the industry. They don't, because I talk to pharmacies all the time, pharmacy owners, operators, and I'm educating them on what I think are basic stuff. I'll give you a second example of an error. Well, we're calling it errors. So sometimes I will catch errors, whether it's intentional or unintentional, okay, from data that I receive from the wholesalers and buying groups where, okay, let me digress just a little bit. Every wholesaler has a different generic program, right? One stop, pro, you know what I'm saying? It's just different generic programs that the wholesaler has. And we're not going to go into the reasons why they have their, but for obvious reasons, they're highly profitable generics are for everybody. So they have their own program. And in your contract, when you sign a contract with a wholesaler buying group, you're committing to a certain percentage, right? A volume of generics that you purchase every month. Of course, you want to know what that pricing is ahead of time. And you want to understand how the rebates are applied, right? So a lot of the times, these companies, they'll say, well, you get whatever. If you do this, XYZ, you'll get 15% rebate, 16% rebate, 18%, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But the data that I receive, sometimes there are errors in their reports, and they're not doing this intentionally most of the time.
The listeners can't see you winking at me now.
I'm not winking. You're a liar. Yeah. But when they price out their drugs, sometimes they incorrectly apply rebates to generics where in the real world they would never receive a rebate on that generic drug. And their data they're sending me or sending the customer, when I say customer, I mean pharmacy owner, it's all inclusive, and it's, so look, I just gave you examples of 2 errors. There's hundreds of them.
Because when the time comes, they're going to say, oh, we don't really rebate that one because that's on the special list of such and such. But they don't tell you that when they're doing it. Right,
but all that is worked out when SRG gets our hand on the data. We will isolate it. We will correct the errors. And we will also help the pharmacy owner understand, and the purchasing manager, whoever's in charge of managing the purchasing process, whatever, at the pharmacy. We help them understand how each drug, each class of drugs how the cost of goods is applied and the rebates is applied for each item in a spreadsheet. And they can keep that. After we're gone, they can continue to keep the wholesaler honest by going back to, hey, wait a minute. You had it applied this way when SRG was involved. Now you're saying it. This is you're taking off the rebate, or you're making that a net billed item, or you know what I'm saying? So we give them all the information to give the pharmacies the leverage. See, right now, I think that's the main problem. The wholesalers and the buying groups, they have the leverage, not the independent pharmacies. Knowledge is power. And I can help independent pharmacies with the knowledge part. I can, because of my, what I know, I can help them.
How do you know something like they've quoted you the older WAC versus the newer WAC? How do you know that? Is it dated or something? Or you don't memorize all those?
Yeah, I have a secret on how I figure that out.
And that must be comparing it to something, though.
Right.
You must pull something into your database and then do a comparison, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I have ways of knowing if something's off.
You've got your ways.
Even if they don't, sometimes the wholesalers have no idea. They thank me afterwards, like, oh, thank you so much.
Sure they do.
No, I'm being serious.
Just like I thank customers. Years ago, we remodeled and someone comes in and says, that should have been a little bit different color. I'm like, thank you. I'm like, thank you for, whatever. No,
look, I'm going to give you an example. And I can't say the name of the wholesaler because I don't want to embarrass them. But one situation that happened with a client, the wholesaler was being as honest as possible. They sent me their data, and I caught $1 million+ error. Well, not just one error. I mean, this was over $1 million difference in a 3-month report. Okay.
Wow.
And I brought it to their attention. They're like, thank you. Oh my goodness. And by the way, this client ended up going with them. If I didn't catch that error, my client would have went with another wholesaler and would have cost them a lot more.
To go with the other wholesaler, but you caught it with this one. It helped everybody out, sort of.
And the wholesaler.
Because they would have gone with someone else.
They would have gone with someone else, and I saved that. See, the error was it was an error that was making their offer look really bad when it wasn't. It wasn't bad. It just looked bad because the data was wrong.
After you have your answer then, do you then make this happen without too much psychological stress on the pharmacist kind of thing? Or how does that go? Once you have an answer, let's say.
Okay, so, I mean, by the way, again, this process takes usually 8 months or so. Okay, this is not a one-day thing. It takes forever. So during that time, I'm going back and forth. Not the pharmacy owner's not going back and forth. The wholesalers, I am. Our consultant is. We're going back and forth. And I tell you, there's a balance. You have to strike a balance because you can't be. Well, I'm not mean to anyone anyway. But I mean, there's been times where I lost my top, and that's just imperfection on my part. But it's very, very rare. I want to get along with everybody, including the wholesalers and the buying groups, and I want to be as fair as possible. And that's very important to me. It has to be fair for the wholesalers and buying groups. They can't even sniff out, if I'm showing any sort of how to say this, any sort of allegiance to any buying group or wholesaler. If anyone feels that way, what good is my business? I have to be neutral, a completely neutral party. When I share bad news or good news with the wholesaler, I need to negotiate a little bit stronger. I do it with kindness, understanding, but I am forceful when I need to be. If I see lies in the data with a particular wholesaler, and I've done this many times, I will tell them, I will highlight it. I'm like, this is not right, bro. this isn't right. You know what I see here, right? You can't push this past Ozzy. You know this.
This is something that is beyond an error. You called it a lie.
This is intentional. We're intentional errors. Yes, they do exist. Yes, they do. Yeah. I mean, it would be great in a perfect world that every organization, every company is completely honest, but unfortunately, that's not the world we live in right now.
Can you give me an example? That might be saying that we're not allowed to give a rebate on this drug, or
they will apply the cost of goods incorrectly on their spreadsheets and send it over to me, and I would catch errors that were obviously done on purpose, and they thought they can get it past me. And I tell you, it's first of all, it's never going to get past me, but it will get past the pharmacy owner, unfortunately.
Yeah. How are you remunerated for this? Are you a percentage of something?
It's an extremely small percentage of the savings.
Of the savings compared to
where they are right now, their current contract. We're getting paid on savings, and they don't pay us up front for anything. We work for almost a year without a penny from the owner. And then after we do our due diligence, everybody feels comfortable with the numbers. I think even including the wholesalers, they're like, man, this process was thorough, man. I know you're doing what's good for, I know this is clean data. So, I make sure it goes through the washer.
You do the savings that they would...
Based off a 3-year contract. So even if they don't sign, let's say they go with a buying group month to month. If I find the right buying group that gives them the best cost of goods, then the savings is based off of what they would save if everything froze for 3 years, like frozen time.
Devil's advocate. So before someone comes to you, they've got to try to get their best price on their own?
No.
But why wouldn't they? Because let's say that I'm paying X and it's like, oh, I could probably do, 0.97X. I'm going to go for 0.97X before I give it to Ozzy, and he's at 0.95X. I don't want to give him...
But see, going back with what we were talking about before, Mike, that means nothing. The offers that I normally see before we get involved is just numbers on a page. They don't mean anything. The pharmacy owner didn't do a thorough analysis like SRG to show the true numbers.
Let me see if I got this right. The pharmacy's out shopping. They will tell someone like a wholesaler, they'll say, look, I'm out shopping. Give me my best deal. They'll get the best deal. It's like, hey, I'm going to have Ozzy look at this. It's a difference between those two because the pharmacist would have already thought they got the best deal.
We get paid based off the difference between their current signed contract and the new contract. So if they try to negotiate, and I've had clients do this, they try to negotiate with the wholesalers before they got us involved. And then they realize, okay, this is a little too much, or I think they're lying to me, and then they get us involved. Now, it would have been better if we were involved before that, as early as possible. I want to know a year ahead of time before a new contract is signed. I want to be involved talking to the pharmacy owner about a year ahead. But with that being said, there's no way you can actually put a number on what they present to the pharmacy owner because it wasn't thorough.
The pharmacist could say, well, I don't want to share all that. No, I already got a discount of this. It's like, well, did you?
Cost minus 10.
Did you? How do you know? Right?
It doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything.
No. You got to get into the weeds, Mike. You have to get into the weeds to figure out what the true offer is.
All right. So Joe's Pharmacy hires you. You find this. You say, we saved this much. It's going to be this much over the 3 years. What happens then? Do you look at the contract or
Yes.
do you sign anything? You look at the contract too.
I look at the contract language too. I'm involved 100% the whole way.
Is some of that malleable?
Yes. I change prime vendor agreements all the time. If I don't like the way something is spelled out in a prime vendor agreement, I will tell them to remove it. I will tell them to change it. Yeah, I do that all the time. That's part of what we do.
Let's say somebody has worked for a year now with Mo, Larry, and Curly from the 3 different wholesalers. That wasn't by accident that I chose those names. Then do you bring this to them and say, hey, Mo and Larry, thanks for talking over the last 6 months or so. Bill's Pharmacy is going to do this, and we'll catch you next time.
I do all of it. All the uncomfortable conversations I have.
You've got.
That's up to the pharmacy owner. If he wants to have the uncomfortable conversations, I don't mind that one bit, but they don't. There's a reason why they hired me. They don't want to be involved in all that stress stuff. I don't know how else to describe it. It's stressful. Turning people down and saying, no, I'm sorry, and then they fight with you. Some wholesalers, they fight with you.
That is the part. It's one thing if you say no to somebody. It's another thing when you know they're going to come back because they're trained that way, right? You know they're going to come back and say, well, if I was able to show you this, would there be any reason why you would not be able, all the crap,
all the stuff I know very well how to do.
My dad, the only sales he taught me was when I was selling candy bars as a kid. He'd say, no, Mike, you don't ask if they want one. This is like for the, school candy sale or something, would you like 3 or would 2 be enough today, ma'am? That was my big sales trick,
Dude, look, Mike, I tell you, when wholesalers and buying groups go through this process, they're exhausted by the end of it. I put them through the ringer. And some of them hate me, I'll be honest. Because I added so much stress to their lives. Now, I feel bad about that. I really do. But there is no other way to get to the truth. So yeah, there are times where some wholesalers will go, Ozzy, I really, really appreciate how thorough you have been. And I just feel like we're being represented. And, I used to be in those shoes. Like, I didn't feel like I was being heard because another wholesaler was saying crazy stuff that wasn't true. And I had no way to defend myself because I wasn't a neutral party.
You knew the other wholesaler was lying, but you don't want to come across as the sales rep that says someone else is lying.
Right. It's frustrating.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Or it was.
Boy,
You have more questions for me?
I want to get you on again sometime. I got a lot of other stuff I want to pick your brain on vendor agreements and on buying groups and on PSAOs and on over-the-counter stuff. I have a lot of information I want to talk to you about still. So come on again sometime?
Sure. Yeah.
You'll have to hear how this one turns out first.
Well, yeah, I got to listen and see how good I look. No, I love this. I love the fact that you have a podcast. And, I don't listen to all pharmacy podcasts because a lot of them don't apply to me personally. The reason why I listen to yours is because I find it interesting. It means something to me. The guests that you invite, I guess I was right because the fact that you invited me means that it kind of works with your listeners.
Yes, exactly. From the beginning, I've said my goal is interesting and entertaining. I'm not saying I'm of this caliber at all, but my show is probably closest to Joe Rogan. I don't get on and say, we're going to talk about the 10 top ways we just chit chat. I looked up something about Rogan today and I said, what's the psychology behind Rogan? And the psychology, they say, is loneliness. They say people like to listen to him because it takes a little bit of loneliness of life out of things because they have some friends that they're listening to. Huh. So that's part of the reason why I come out on Monday mornings is because it's better now, but I don't particularly like Sunday nights or Mondays because stress picks up. Without saying it, I'm trying to be there as the Monday friend for the Monday blues of people driving to work.
I love art. And to me, this is an art form. Even though you're a pharmacist, Mike, you're an artist.
Thank you. It's fun to do something that nobody else can do. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people can do better than I'm doing, but nobody else can do Mike because I'm the only mic there is. And so
That's right.
It's fun to throw stuff out there and do it only the way that I can do it, for better or for worse. Ozzy, let's say someone's interested in this, but before they give you a call, before they involve you, what's just something interesting you would leave them with, or maybe a little homework or a little something to think about?
The bare minimum, they need to know when their contract expires with their wholesaler. I mean, you'd be surprised how many will call me and they have no idea when their contract expires. And really, we can't really get involved, if you're 3 years away or 2 years away from the end of contract. I mean, there's nothing for us to do. So at the very minimum, they need to know the date on their contract when it expires.
That's the main one.
Yeah.
All right, Ozzy, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thanks for joining us. So much information, and we're going to get you on again. But in the meantime, man, keep doing your thing. And pharmacists need this, and in particular, need you. So thanks for what you're doing.
Yeah, you're very welcome, Mike. And thank you. Thank you for inviting me to your show. I love your show, and I'm looking forward to talking again.
You still haven't proven that you've listened to more than 7 minutes.
I listened to at least 10 minutes of your show.
On nights where you've had a lot of caffeine?
Or alcohol.
That brings the average back down. All right, Ozzy, take care.
All right, you too, Mike.
Ya.
Thanks.